sometimes many things have good intentions and end poorly.
Understanding the heart behind the industry, it became evident to me there's a story to tell.
We have this stigma. We need to really get in that same battlefront that they are.
Companies that are trying to push hospitality culture within the long-term care community, and I think it's brilliant.
One keeps you present and excellent now. The other one keeps you ahead of the curve so you stay relevant.
What you measure gets managed, right?
These are the organizations that are going to demand greatness, not perfection.
The narrative about Cantex, if you will, has always been it's a really hard place to work. We're always coming from a place of yes.
I think that facilities are hungry for a dialogue between vendors.
The government's getting smarter because people have cherry picked for a long time. Like a third of your taxpayer money is going to fraud.
Welcome to Our Purpose Podcast, a podcast where stories from skilled nursing and long-term care come to life. I am your co-host, Kip Kruger, a voice shaped by industry experience and a belief that everyone's story has a purpose and it's worth telling. We got a great guest today. We have an exciting episode. The boys are back in town. Chris Light, COO, James Dieter, CEO, Principal Health. How we doing, fellas?
Excellent. Go, man. Excited to get started.
Yeah, let's go.
Very excited today. We're lucky to speak with Armando Guzman, who is the Chief Strategy Officer at Cantex, where he plays a large role in the overall strategy for a very successful organization that we're real excited to kind of dig into today. I'm going to kick us off with a little bit. I want to hear about your background and a lot of other things, but James and Kip recently did a podcast with Gary Blake, and when I listened to it, unfortunately I couldn't join. I was really upset, but he talked about specifically how they have really grown their organization by plucking people from different industries and pulling them into creative solutions. And your background is not in skilled nursing. You're not an LVN or previous DON. Can you walk us through your background and ultimately how you ended up in skilled nursing?
Yeah, I mean, way to start me off as a villain on this. I come from the dark side, right? So background's primarily managed care. I mean, straight out of high school while going to school, jumping into managed care in Florida. So working for, the evil empires, if you will. So, the familiar names, the Uniteds, Humana.
Hey, we're friendly with those guys.
Right.
So on this show, they're our friends.
I love them. Honestly, I had a great career there. Couldn't be more thankful. I think they deal with a little bit of what our industry does in LTC too, is just misbranded sometimes or misunderstood. So always came from that background. Chris, network roles, contracting, some sales, a little bit of operations, a little bit of everything, really on the managed care side, and through that moved me to Texas, where I, in my last role I had at United Healthcare in particular, interacted plenty with Cantex. So as you will hear, and I hope we can delve into, we do a lot of innovative things at Cantex. One of them was starting our own I-SNP plan. So when we did that, through mutual conversations, relationships, one thing led to another, ended up coming over to Cantex to lead the I-SNP plan. So managed care through and through. I've become a skilled nursing person, hope to stay a skilled nursing person forever now at this point. Got a lot of passion for the space, and I think it needs new voices. That's one of the things that I'm very passionate about, is bringing people from different backgrounds. Are we shortchanging ourselves in terms of the talent pool by just looking at retreads and people that have been there that maybe aren't as talented but are stuck there? How do we really market ourselves as an industry out there to grow the talent pool?
Very nice. And just staying on that same vein, we're going to spend a lot of time on the I-SNP. We're going to spend a lot of time talking insurance, but I don't want to go there just yet. But what's the biggest surprise as you entered? You've been here for several years now, but as you came over to long-term care, post-acute care from managed care?
I'd say how many intelligent people we have and creative people we have on this side. And that's not a slight to our industry. I think our industry, I mentioned it briefly before, what it has done is it doesn't tell its story well often. So I think coming here when you're on the other side I've always been on, it's you tend to maybe view it as something that's going to be under creative or not innovative enough as a segment, right? And when you get into it, you see yourself, you're surrounded by, I'm blessed to have great teammates at Cantex and in our DNA and peers. Creative Solutions, who was just on here, very innovative companies, but you wouldn't know that. If you're outside of that, the typical consumer, all they're hearing about long-term care, skilled nursing is, the negative stuff, the dumping, they're just hiding your grandma and don't care about what she's doing, all these false narratives that are out there. So to get the front row seat, I think that's probably what's surprising to me, to say, wow, there's a lot of smart people working their butts off here to make this a better place, a better segment. It's the challenge, though. I think as busy and inundated as we are with all the asks that there is and all the regulatory there is we still need to pause and be able to tell our story, and we haven't done that well. Yeah. That's a chronic problem.
You mentioned that you don't believe we tell our story well. What are some things that we can do better to tell a better story?
I think highlighting even some of the stuff. So when we were speaking before the podcast, I think one of your guests you had, having Eric Wood on, right? Yeah. I think it was probably my favorite episode, that's right? Awesome. So highlighting pioneers that you have in the space, right? People that are passionate at what they do, humanizing it. I think that's what ends up happening is we're a very strange health sector because we have a real estate component to it. And I think that gets overshadowed too often in the news, right? There'll be a lot of articles, literature you'll read about REIT or ownerships elsewhere. And, that can frame the narrative of what we are, right? And that almost creates that narrative where it's like, oh, no, it's basically real estate folks that just dump people there. The more we humanize the segment and we bring out stories and all-stars, the better off we are. Yeah. I think also we need to pause. What ends up happening sometimes is in any industry, I think you could be short-sighted. So you're looking at things that might drive EBITDA or outcomes, and those are very important. But I think you got to be thinking about the micro and the macro at the same time, right? So I think you need to pause and say, hey, I know this seems like you're taking 2 hours out of your day, but what are we doing as an organization to partner with our collaborators, right? Not just competitors in the space, to really tell the story, to lobby more effectively, to go to DC if we have to just back some stuff that is visible to us, really, and just tell the story. I think we can go on a huge tangent on this, but I think one of the things, no matter how you feel about the Affordable Care Act, right? Sometimes many things have good intentions and end poorly. One of the intentions of it was to make us more savvy consumers. I think we serve a part in that. I don't even think people know what nursing homes do, right? Or what long-term care does, or the difference between skilled nursing. I think there's even a bad stigma, I'll give you a short one, that happens all the time. Most people, including a bunch of us in our space, think Medicare will pay for nursing homes to live there, right? Yeah. And that's a huge shock factor to a lot of families where they're like, oh, no, the government doesn't pay for me to live here. No, there's multiple ways we can get there, but it's not a benefit. So I think just understanding what skilled nursing facilities do and long-term care, the ins and outs, we got to do better. It's really going to have a trickle-down effect where it should increase census. It should not vilify us, right? Where I think senior living does a better job than nursing home does, right? Senior living is a little cooler. We have this stigma. We need to really get in that same battlefront that they are. So,
well, I'll give a shout out to James first, because this and on that is telling a story and avenues to tell a story. You got Facebook, you got TikTok, you got Instagram. One of the things that I was so thankful that James did is like he outside the box thinking of a podcast. I believe that we're probably the first and only in Texas long-term care podcast. We've had some really cool people on here just talking about telling their story and the ability for us and to give them a platform to tell their story. I would love to hear from you, James, is like, I know we have to be creative in telling a story. Why a podcast?
Yeah, I mean, I think that we've been saying it since the beginning, shining a positive light on long-term care is important. I was quite surprised. I've been in the medical industry my entire career, started in the orthopedics and interventional pain, moved into more in the diagnostics, over to mobile diagnostics. And throughout that role, I've worked in long-term acute care hospitals, et cetera. But I even did rounds in nursing homes, but I did not understand the quality of the people within them. So after, years of meeting folks, going to conferences, understanding the heart behind the industry, it became evident to me there's a story to tell.
Yeah.
So these days, there's a lot of ways to get your word out there, but we felt like this is the best way. And I've talked to these guys about, well, let's bring some folks on this podcast. Let's create a podcast. Let's bring people on that can actually tell the story for us. I think this is the best medium to communicate with the public today. So that's why.
Yeah.
I would also add to that real quick, and I'm
Please.
curious your thoughts on here because you mentioned senior living specifically also. But and I know you'll have thoughts on this too. I know you have thoughts on this. But when we look at like pushing it out and trying to shine a light and or create a narrative of what people is, then you have marketing dollars that come into play, right? Sure. Which in skilled nursing, just like in our industry, you run on pretty thin margins. And so for us, a podcast makes sense. It's relatively inexpensive. I mean, we're not boosting this with big dollars and paying for all these things. It's
Not boosting with any dollars.
It's no, exactly. It was the cost of the equipment.
Yeah.
And today you can do that, right?
Right.
With social media and things of that if you're savvy. And so I'd be curious. I agree with you. Senior living facilities I tell people all the time, I want to go to one when I turn 65. I'm like, it's like a college.
tennis.
It's like a college dorm complex. You know what I mean? And skilled nursing specifically doesn't have that. And so how do you think about that from framing narratives? And I say that to say, Cantex has really high quality buildings.
Yep.
They're beautiful.
Beautiful. Yeah, we invest obviously in the aesthetics of the building, right? The bones are the most important thing, right? But also the optics are what really often sells to families. I'd say honestly highlighting activities, right? So nursing is probably, and this is more an opportunity. I don't necessarily think everybody's doing this. I think creative does a great job highlighting food. But I think as an industry where we need to grasp a little more is we're not a hospitality, so just hear me out on that. It's not like senior living where we're a hospitality industry per se that's trying to do medical. We're clearly medical. That doesn't mean we can't embrace some of the best stuff of hospitality. And I think that's where the opportunity is, right? So where you might highlight, and I think our DNA historically as an industry is to highlight nursing, very important. You don't want to send your mom or dad somewhere the clinic is not going to be good. But what's going to attract and permeate the people that aren't looking right now, kind of the people you're talking about, Chris, and really the image is really focusing on the hospitality stuff. So I think really focusing on dining and activities. Activities I find are understated in terms of external marketing. Even the best companies, they're doing food, but really activities. The more you can make it, and I think what confuses people sometimes is they might overthink it. The more you can make it a fun place for your mom and dad to be at, the better off you're going to be. And that sounds simple. And sometimes the best ideas are simple. We'll find, I think one of the topics we're going to talk about later is maybe our transfusion. That's a lot simpler than you think. You can overthink some stuff when highlighting how fun it can be for your mom and dad to be there is probably the stuff we need to be doing as an industry as well. That doesn't mean you want your mom and dad to end up in a nursing home. We get that, right? So it's kind of not overthinking. It's saying, we know this is not where you want your loved one to necessarily end up. But if they end up here, this can be a much more joyous, loving place than you think it is.
Almost like you're selling a community.
Yeah, and I was going to say
Correct.
there's really I'd say I have a holistic framework of how I see the world in general, but from my standpoint, when you think about a nursing home and you just compared it to a senior living and you think, okay, well, this is more medical, that's more on like a hotel or something where there's more entertainment based. The reality is when you think about mental health and physical health, if you have a really nice dietary plan where people enjoy their food and eat their food, which is not always easy to do to get the seniors to eat their food, and they're active. I mean, motion is lotion, right? If you can have them active and you do things, obesity goes down. It controls diabetes. It controls you have a lower risk of cancer if they're eating well and exercising. So all the disease processes that you would look at on the medical side are actually improved by the leisure side. So there's this correlation, a holistic correlation between the two. And if we really did get that right, to where skilled nursing almost became more of a hospitality plus medical rather than the other way around, then it might be a perception of like, man, I look forward to my parents going to a nursing home someday. Like that's going to be such a good experience for them. Like, how do we reframe that? Going back to why are we here? Why are we doing this podcast? It was that's it. How do we bring the quality up? So pushing the quality culture through skilled nursing, people are doing that. I mean, that's not like we're coming up with that here. They're definitely I would say Cantex and Creative are some of the top of the list of companies that are trying to push hospitality culture within the long-term care community. And I think it's brilliant.
Yeah. I think they also do a really good job, both companies do a really good job of, like we were talking about, telling your story, showcasing your story, showcasing what you do, both on Instagram, social media, like TikTok, things like that. What kind of initiatives is Cantex bringing to the table in 2026 to tell their story better, to showcase their beautiful facilities? What are they doing? What kind of initiatives are y'all doing this year?
I'll make it a little bit about the last 18 months, but also what's going forward. I think I'm very proud about what we've done. You've seen, if you pay attention to social media, external landscape, stuff like this, joining your podcast, in the last 18 months, we've made a intentional shift to be more external facing, right? We realized we have
Why?
We have great outcomes. We've always been looked up to, right? I'm very proud of when I hear Gary compliment our CEO, Robin Underhill, on the last podcast, right, on our company. We got a great story to tell.
Yeah.
We have always been more inward facing, keep our head down, plug away. We have learned that we can lift up the industry together, doing great things, right? We're a big part of the coalition in Texas that's had huge wins for the industry. But we have a good story to tell. We think we do a lot of things better that collectively can lift up the whole industry, but also we can service some of these buildings. We understand that we have peers of ours that do a great job, but they might not have the capitalization we do. If we can do one of our verticals, for you, we can do that well. We can do that together. It's a win if we're lifting up the industry. We've learned that more than ever in the last really 2 years. We really put our head down. Senior leadership got together, and we really had buy-in from our CEO. She is, if you've seen her anywhere, she's wonderful at presenting. She thinks she's not, right? She's gonna be mad I'm busting her chops on this, but she's a great presenter. She's very gregarious, knows how to speak very well. Just always head down. We've always been executors, and I think you get lost a little bit when you want to go all in on strategy. We've seen poor companies that are all strategic, no execution. Really, in today's day and age, you got to do both, right? Sure. One keeps you present and excellent now. The other one keeps you ahead of the curve so you stay relevant, right? So we made that and top-down model behavior. I mean, we never went to conferences. We go to conferences now. We're trying to learn. We're trying to adapt. We're pushing each other. We're external facing. We have good goals as an organization to either, our communications officer gave us kind of a mandate, right? Get two podcast speaking engagements or write 2 articles in the year. So really just being external facing has been in our DNA. It's something we're judged on now.
I think as an administrator, I would say that that's been a cultural shift in the last 2, maybe 3 years. Previously to that, there was an inward facing where you do just put your head down and you grind. What has changed in the last 2 years? I think I know the answer. That's what I'm asking. What has changed in the last 2 years to make us face more outward and show and tell the story a little bit more?
A couple things have changed. One of them is we used to be, I would say this, and I don't mean this as dismissive for anybody else. We used to be the only ones with pretty buildings, right? If you know our industry, right? And then now we're not the only ones with the pretty buildings, right? So it's really about building the narrative about everything else we're doing as a company, right? Not just having the prettiest buildings. That's number one. Number two, I think it goes back to something offline that the 4 of us were talking about is human capital and attracting talent. COVID, this is not unique to us. You guys probably deal with this too at PHS, is getting elite talent these days is harder than ever. There is a fraction of the workforce that is very lazy, doesn't have some work ethic, right? There's a fraction of the workforce that is looking for things to be passionate about, and that's valid. So when we were keeping our head down, I think the narrative about Cantex, if you will, has always been it's a really hard place to work, right? And I think once you peek in and we start to tell our story, and I hope to convey that as well, is it's a really cool place to work. Yeah. Is it hard? Yes. But you know what? There's value in hard work. Sure. And I think that is part of the story we want to tell. Is we know we were getting, and the only people that would take offense to this if you're a retread, but you get some of the retreads in the industry if you stay stale.
For sure.
If you stay dynamic, you're telling your story accurately, you're doing good things. You want people that want to work hard to come and bang down your door. And we really looked within a couple of years ago and we're like, why don't we have a line of people coming down our door, right? When we're a great company, you're surrounded by smart people that give a crap, which is short on these days, right?
Yeah.
So come work for us. So a lot of it had to do with workforce development and telling our story and just building our bench strength.
I would just say something real quick that you so Gary mentioned this last week or last podcast. He mentioned that it's really challenging to work at creative. And then you said that about your organization. I just want to go on record and say any great organization has a recipe. That recipe always includes accountability, and accountability requires people to do their job well. Right. And what we see is there are those folks that just don't deserve to be there. Like if there are people that don't want to put out 100% and they're just not going to do well. And I think there needs to be some honesty about that. I always try to have when we talk to management here, I always try to have just an honest perspective on this. Hey, this isn't for everybody. We're going to work really hard here. You're going to be held accountable. And this probably isn't the right place for everybody in the room today. But we're going to weed that out and we're going to figure out who's there. And I think that's okay. Like there are more laid back places and they will not have the same results. There's a reason that Bill Belichick got results year after year and Nick Saban got results year after year. Those guys demand accountability for what's happening. And great organizations like Cantex do the same. And that's okay. It's like there are organizations, you're not going to have as many wins. But you know what? You can go work there and you're going to probably do just fine. But and I think that at some point we need to separate ourselves from these are the organizations that are going to demand greatness, not perfection, but we're going to strive for excellence. We're going to get as close to perfection as possible. It's impossible to be perfect, but we're going to try to get there. We do that here. It's a tough place to work. We turn over a lot of people that are new to the organization. People that make it stay for, we have so many people have been here 10 plus years now. But there's a lot of turnover in the first 6 months because they're like, whoa, what am I doing? This is a really challenging place to work. Not that challenging. We lay it out. We demand all of you. We want 100% effort. And if you're not going to put in 100% effort, we really don't want you here. Go somewhere else. Actually, in fact, we encourage you to go to our competitors and we'll provide you their information.
Talking about 100%, Cantex on that same kind of vein, Cantex has had 100% occupancy. You just celebrated on social media, told a great story, saw it on everyone. Shout out to Cantex for posting that. That was really cool to see. 15 facilities, 100% occupancy in 2025. That's astounding. How?
I'd like to say there was a lot of science, but it's a lot of hard work, honestly. So I'll start there. I think it's indicative of the company we are. We've historically done things with outworking everybody, right? And now we're really in a nice phase where we're putting tools to that as well for scalability, right? Because you can do so much with hard work. I still think that's where everything starts nowadays, and it's a precious commodity. But we need tools there. I would say we have the best sales team, honestly, in the state. I'd put us up against anybody. I think everybody will say that as well. One of the things we've done a couple neat things that don't necessarily share the secret sauce, but we'll give you an idea. I think one of the great things we did as a company, which made it hard, is we have a high skilled mix, right? Everybody's shooting for that. When maybe about 7 years ago, and this probably changed like 5 or 6 years ago, I think it was a great thing that we put into place. But when I first got here, and I have nothing to do with this change, by the way, so I'm not going to take credit for this. It's definitely Robin and Edward Pro, our VP of sales, is we used to report only on our skilled mix every day.
Yeah.
Okay. That's where we would stand up. That was the barometer for how the company's doing. And in that first couple of years, we really morphed to be able to report on the skilled census, because everybody in the room knows that's where margin comes from, but also overall census. So Kip, to answer your question, one of the things I think we've done beautifully is there are facilities with a 30% skilled mix, right? But they're at 65% occupancy.
Sure. Yep.
There are people that have maybe a nice skilled census, but it's all from their long-termers who ended up getting sick, you know, falling and having to go to the hospital and come back. Our sales organization is held to the standard of keeping occupancy high while having a high case mix. So what that's created is an urgency for our BDSs, which is what we call our salespeople, to really organically grow the company. And I think that is something that really is special in our DNA, is we're saying we want good outcomes for you. I'm not saying other operators don't, but it literally, if we are amping our skilled census because we had people get ill in our buildings, that's not good for our organization. It's not good for our residents, right? Yep. Let's organically grow the company from outside, have skilled census, and still deliver a best-in-class product for the long-termers that live here, that want to stay home. So I think that's one of the things. I think we always love attracting good sales talent, so I can always use that as a pitch. We're very generous on in terms of I think we're a competitive payer.
Sure.
In terms of salary and structure, so we incentivize our high performers. I think we really also, as an organization, we do this well. We do this really well in sales. I love sports analogies, so I love that you brought up Belichick and Saban, is you're not going to treat everybody the same. I think we really are in a good habit of where we are trying to prop up our high performers. You get the most ROI as an organization if you're calling out those people. So Kip, back to your earlier point on the occupancy, that's exactly like Robin's vision for that meeting, right? When Robin and Edward are getting together to set up that meeting, the whole goal is let's expose in a good way our all-stars, right? Sure. This is the motivator for them, right? And it's going to drive that. And yes, it's going to feel sad if you were at 97% and you were outside of the club. Yes, but that's by design, right? Sure. We want you at 100%. You should be striving for greatness, and we will do great things for great people. We're a great company for everybody. I don't want to say necessarily you're not being evil to your low performers, but I think any smart company says not everybody is the same. The people that are really, really pouring it out for us, we're gonna go above and beyond for them, and we're gonna get more results. It's self-serving besides the right thing to do.
One more thing. One of the biggest challenges that I felt in long-term care was the connection between, you call them BDSs?
Yeah.
Marketing directors and nursing. How does Cantex connect the two? Because oftentimes we see in long-term care, they are not connected. And when they're not connected, there's no way you're getting to 100% occupancy. So in my mind,
can you frame that up a little bit for us? Yeah. Like when you say not connected, you're an administrator in a building, you are disconnecting with BDS. Like you can educate me on this actually.
So marketing folks, they were incentivized, they were driven to bring in census, no matter what happens. Nursing, on the other hand, were approving or disproving these admissions. Okay. And so sometimes nursing didn't approve an admission because they thought the patient would be more difficult.
So there's an incentive misalignment.
There's an incentive misalignment. And so what happens is both of the marketing and the nursing team have to be aligned to say, like, these are the clientele that we're going after, and or, hey, this may be a little bit more difficult of a patient. It may take a little bit more labor hours to take care of this patient, but here is our end goal. Yeah. And if you align those people, and I feel like Cantex has done a fantastic job of alignment. They have to be aligned. And so that was kind of trying to dig in a little bit that what are you doing to align? Because you have great BDS, you have great salespeople, but if people aren't holding your back door, if you are letting patients go out the door, like return to acute, go back out to the hospital, it doesn't matter how many people you bring in and you admit, if they're going right back out, if you're having the same amount of admissions, you're never going to get to 100% occupancy. How does Cantex do things differently?
We are aligned, but if we got any of our DONs, that'll watch this or hear this, there's always going to be tension, and I'd actually welcome that, Kip. Like I think that I use the word a lot. Me personally, with my team and direct reports, is like there's healthy tension that is necessary, right? And I think those are two departments that should be checks and balances of each other. What I do think we do well, to your point, is where we might be more aligned than our peers out there, is we're always coming from a place of yes, right? Yep. Does that mean we're going to take somebody we can't?
Always
a yes.
Do we And it's an anxiety, that's probably the right word, that
Yes.
we use in everything. Everything. We're right now in a journey of evaluating some like AI tools for admissions. And our mantra, all of us on senior team that's really joining that, is like, we need to make sure we're embracing this, but it's not taking away from us coming from a place of yes. So I would say our DONs do a great job. Does that sometimes frustrate them that we're census driven? Absolutely. What I think we message, and everybody should, and if anybody's like listening and doesn't drink this Kool-Aid, they're not in the right company, is none of us have jobs if there isn't sales and census, right? And I think that is something we message well, is the DON ultimately doesn't have the job if the organization's not growing.
Yeah.
So we have tense times, right?
Sure.
There is several times sales should be pushing. And that's one thing I think we articulate well to our field teams, is sales should be throwing everything at the wall and see what sticks, right? That's their job, to push it. Should we also have checks and balances? Absolutely, where we're like, no, we can't serve that person, or that person is going to be a long-term loss for us, right? We don't have the capabilities here. It might lead to an RTA. That's not good for us as an organization.
Sure.
For key metrics we're driving to. We do all that, but we're always coming from the place of yes. I think we have aligned goals too, not to get too in depth, but census, I would say our DONs are invested.
Good.
In census.
I think that's important. That you cannot forget the DON. Sometimes in my early career, that you would have a marketing plan and a marketing bonus that the administrator and the marketing director were on, but the DON was not on. And so a couple of my homes, I was like, no, the DON has to be involved in this plan. If you don't have the DON's buy-in, you're never going to get to where you want to get to.
Yeah, and we do something unique, I would say, at Cantex, and I'm always like watching this. It has its pros and cons, like anything. I would say at a Cantex facility, if you guys get to know them, the DON is like very elevated at Cantex, which is a great thing. It's a healthcare facility. I would almost say it's a dynamic where they're peers co-running the building with the administrator. And that's not what I would call typical. I would say in most operators, there's clear delineation where the ED or administrator is running the building. The DON is their lieutenant general, but is still like on their team. We have a different stance where we really like elevate the DONs. I'm not saying there's certain things we have with conviction. That's just kind of our playbook.
Yep.
I think it's really good for the DONs. I think, sometimes maybe that's an interesting dynamic for the EDs or the admins. There's pros and cons to that. But I would say one of the things that help us with census is the DON is elevated in that position. So by her being a co-pilot instead of a lieutenant general with the ED, they should care about the census and they should care about the totality of the building, not just their individual clinical metrics.
All
Are
right,
they
so
incentivized by that outcome? So like for one of the things that we do, you said so many things. I took down notes. I'm like, man,
I talk fast.
I'm going to rewind you a bit. Specifically on sales and kind of from the BDS and the DON standpoint, just you talked about incentive alignment and how you guys are a yes company, which I think is fantastic. We have a ton of conversations. Kip is obviously runs a lot of our corporate sales. And so how often it's like you're coming and you're like, okay, we got 15 buildings. They want to start this time. And it's effectively a huddle with phlebotomy or imaging, right?
Yep.
And saying, wow, this building's really hard or really hard to service. This one's easy. This and what does my staffing look like? But I think we do a good job of getting the team together and saying, hey, we're going to do this somehow. The timing might be something that we can negotiate. We might have to go back and have caveats to how we do things. But I think we do something similar in how you all are running that. And it's been quite successful for us, right, for our growth. But I was specifically interested in, do you all, how you talked about how the DON is almost like a co-pilot. Is the DON incentivized in any form from a standpoint of, like, just say bonus off of EBITDA of the building per se?
Without getting in exact specifics,
Sure.
I would say yes. So they have
that's one
metrics
way
that
to
are tied to the building overall, not just clinical outcomes.
That's one way to excite them about having a bigger
Absolutely.
census, right? And so we talked
Absolutely.
about incentive misalignment. If your DON gets to partake in that, they're going to be motivated,
Absolutely.
right? So, yeah.
And even in this, going back to Kip, Chris asking about the 100% club, right? Is we typically, for any of those celebrations, I have seen other people that would just invite maybe their BDS and their ED.
Yeah.
We always incorporate the DON. We know that he or she is a specific driver in that outcome, right? Like we wouldn't get there without her buy-in or her chipping in
So basically what you're saying is if you're an administrator listening to this podcast, align with your DON, elevate your DON, and you're going to have 100% occupancy. Basically,
Exactly. It's as simple as that.
Simple as that.
Simple as that. Simple as that.
Just elevate them.
One thing you said though that we talk about it all the time in leadership meetings is what you measure gets what you measure gets managed, right? And the simple, you said one thing was like we used to only look at skilled.
Yep.
We started looking at everything and tracking it and talking what our goals were, and miraculously, it's obviously not miraculous. It's a lot of hard work, but measuring that is very helpful.
Oh yeah, we're big on that. We're constantly using the term KPIs and stuff like that. But if it isn't measured, you can't really track whether you're moving the needle, what's happening as an organization. So that's big. We have staples like that. So the sales team has stand up and stand down every single day, reporting on every single metric. It's interesting. We're pretty aggressive on that front.
Awesome.
So, yep.
I think we should get into a little bit about the vertical integration with all the ancillary businesses that y'all do. And so my understanding is there's 7 different business units inside Cantex.
Yep.
Let's just start. What does the transfusion fall under? Or that's really just inside the skilled
That's
nursing
inpatient
side?
division, but we can, if you want me to jump into that before we get into the verticals, we can talk
tell us
the
about that. I think that
transfusion.
was really cool. You guys got a ton of PR on it.
We did. It was a great win. So I think a perfect storm of a couple stuff. A great initiative that makes sense for our residents. And then we were really at a good point in our journey on social media communication where we had our human capital leader did a great job leading social media for a long time. And then now our compliance officer has taken over that, and it's just perfect storm of we finally knew how to tell our story at the same time that we're doing great things. Hospital transfusion, so we have a great partner in Vellum Health. They got a lot of nice press out of this too. I would say we were really, one of the things that is consistent in our DNA is we are like not scared of trying new stuff.
Yeah.
We're not risk averse at all, right? Or and I think that is an important part of Cantex, right? When we were meeting with these vendors, there's sometimes, you guys know the deal, you're meeting with solutions partners out there, and sometimes you meet with partners and you're like, this is a no-brainer. Mm-hmm. Like, why aren't we doing it? And sometimes it's either a new venture or somebody that doesn't necessarily know how to tell their story. These guys know how to tell their story. If you know their lead guy, he does a great job with that. But at the same time, the transfusion really hadn't taken off in Texas just because nobody was thinking about it, right? So it was as simple as sitting down with a new vendor that we're looking at for traditional stuff, right? Midline, pick line, stuff we're doing. And then through the dialogue, we're talking about pain points. And I think this is an important part that we have done too. We've had a really big shift on a couple things in the last 2 years. The other one is procuring stuff. We're so much better at it now. We ask a lot of questions. We talk to multiple partners, really push. We think we're your best customer because we will be annoying. We will ask questions, but we'll try to level you up with us, right? So when we're looking at vendors, we talk about pain points, and one of them was unnecessary transfers. So through that dialogue with Vellum comes up, hey, you can do transfusions in-house. We do this in other states. For some reason, nobody does this in Texas. Then it's as simple as looping in your VP of clinical, Cindy Bliss, coming in and being like, is there anything regulatory wrong with this? It sounds like a no-brainer. Why wouldn't you do this, right? And then just going through multiple conversations. I'm speeding it up. Obviously, it takes time, right? Sure. Multiple meetings, all that. Really looking at the ROI too, because to your point, Chris, and I never want to dismiss that, you can be as benevolent an organization as you want to be. We're on short margins. If we can't pay for it, it doesn't make sense. Yeah. And it is expensive. So I do want to point that out. But the ROI is keeping somebody home. Yeah. Keeping those census days. Having better outcomes, having a social media presence, all that. So that came from the inpatient division. Sorry, I need a drink of water talking too much. But that came from the inpatient division, just looking at pain points with RTAs. We had a very innovative building of ours that always raises their hand. So on and so forth. We've been thrilled with that partnership.
Dude, that is absolutely just like, I'm not sure what the word is, but like that hits home for me. Going from a nursing home administrator to now corporate sales, you don't get to the point that you got to with the blood transfusions without really good dialogue between your facility and your vendor. And I will shout out, many people have worked with Principal and given me the ability to have a dialogue with them, say, this is the service that we can offer you. This is what we can do. And we don't get to great things, which is awesome. We don't get to great things without a really, really good dialogue. And I think that's super important that you have that dialogue, that facilities now are opened up a little bit more. I think that facilities are hungry for dialogue between vendors. What can you offer? Is it a better service for me? Is it a better outcome for our patients?
Yeah.
And I think that one in particular was very motivating for the building. I don't know if I can swear on the podcast. Maybe you edited it out.
Go
But
ahead.
our family member, the RP for the resident that had the first one literally was like, and it's not a big one. I do a lot worse swearing. But it just after we said, hey, how do you think about this being the first one? He said, I think it's badass, honestly, that my grandma got this done. And I think that stuff is very cool.
Sure.
Going back to our earlier point on how do you attract people, I think our ADON, our DON, and our ED that day were super excited. I think you leave and you're like, oh, cool. We did something new, right?
First ever in
this
Texas.
segment
That's so
that
cool.
sometimes feels like it can get stagnated and nobody gives a crap about it. You did something new.
Yeah.
And that, even if that only just motivates you to be a little more creative and think things outside the box, I think there's tons of solutions that we need to get more innovative people into the space to be thinking outside the box about things.
Yeah, I would
like
double click on this. So we call it aging in place, right? And this is just being a patient advocate. If we can keep them in their home, and this was something really until we had the podcast, I didn't actually hear this much. We used to call it buildings. We call it, it's like contracts buildings, where it's a very medical transactional for us. To see it from the other side and specifically speak with the DONs and administrators that we've spoken with, we've heard more about, like, you're coming into someone's home.
Yeah.
You're really there. So if you can do a blood transfusion in their home, they didn't have to leave for the day. They didn't have to leave for the night. They might have to be under observation if they went somewhere else, whatnot. So you're able to, like, what other services do we have that we can bring into someone's home in Texas? And we're going to get into this a little bit later, but, we've got the silver tsunami coming. So within the next 8 years, the expectation is that the population that lives in assisted living and nursing homes is going to double in the state of Texas, which is like kind of a exciting and also a problem. That's a huge number of people that are going to need to be taken care of. Well, if we're going to want to treat them with compassion in their home, we better figure out this stuff.
Yep.
It's not just blood transfusions. It needs to go a lot further. And I think it's awesome that you guys are the tip of the sword. You're figuring out how to solve these solutions so that people have a better quality of life. We're always here to protect patient outcomes and experiences. That's our mission at Principal. And we love to see partners and people in the industry who are doing the same. I think it's really great.
Cool.
Yeah.
Let's go back to vertical integration. Tell us about the vertical integration of Cantex, and if the listeners don't know what vertical integration is, tell us what's up.
We're control freaks in terms of outcomes, so we tend to think if we can do it ourselves, we'll do it better. For a myriad of reasons, right? It's not necessarily going to be that we have the subject matter expertise to do it better, but there's going to be aligned accountability. We also, it's just in our DNA from the beginning of time, right? So we typically add service lines every, I would say 5 to 10 years. I'll do a quick just run through on that. So we have our own pharmacy, pharmacare. We do rehab in-house. That's probably the most junior business. I'll circle back to that. Okay. We do home health, TheraCare, hospice, Elysian. We have an I-SNP plan, ProCare Advantage. We have a medical group, Advanced Primary Care Practice. And then Pivot Rehab is our most recent vertical, where we did last year. We've always done therapy in-house. What we didn't do is treat it as its own vertical.
Yep.
And that's been beneficial for lots of reasons. When you're looking at it from like a P&L perspective, we've been able to isolate. Were we overstaffed? Was it being hidden by the building success? How does this look as a standalone? And then kind of message it out. We have a couple external customers in the senior living space. So it's been very productive for us in the past for lots of reasons. We think it's investing 101, right? So I think I talked to Chris a little bit about that through COVID. That buoyed us, right? Having the ancillaries when SNF census was down. Then there's multiple months lately, the inpatient division is doing great, right? And outpacing the ancillaries. But it really gives you, it protects you in volatile periods, right? If you have kind of all the buckets you have there, it improves outcomes. And then more than ever, we are totally working as like a very cohesive organism. I would say we have struck, I'm very proud of us. I feel right now we have struck a really nice balance where we're one, but many at the same time, right? And what that means is everybody still got their own goals. You got to drive to that. But constantly, I would say every one of our divisional leads is thinking about the entire organization when they wake up. It's, hey, I might just be doing rehab, but can I support, the I-SNP plan? Is there something I can do for the inpatient division? Pharmacies thinking outside the box. Yeah. Can I do something for my hospice division? The vertical units really also give us line of sight into stuff. I would say one of the things that has been neat, and it'll be a little bit of a tangent, you guys can redirect me if anything, but like the I-SNP plan in particular, we have found that there's a chronic problem, and this is across the country, of specialty vendors that go into your buildings and just see everybody, right? Since you're not paying the bills, you can't always be a good steward of the government's money, right? You don't know that's happening, right? That they're literally like, okay, everybody here needs X. I'm not going to badmouth a specific vendor.
Sure.
Everybody needs X in the house, when the truth is probably only 30% of the residents needed that. Yeah. Having the I-SNP plan has given us that lens to say, oh my God, did you know X vendor is seeing everybody in our buildings? That's happening regardless if they're on the I-SNP plan. And if we're being good stewards for these are like the macro things I'm talking about with you guys. Tackling that stuff is what helps the industry better. We want to make sure we're not seeing our large wound vendors, behavioral health vendors, dental vendors on an OIG list. What can we do better is being stewards of that and laying protocols and saying, hey, this is who you should be seeing in the building. Can you quarterback it through us? And we're starting to do that great. Without the ancillaries, we wouldn't have the visibility we do within the organization to everything. So
we should just get into the I-SNP.
Yeah, I was thinking that too.
Yeah.
So, it's interesting, the collaboration between the building and the insurance plan and the building really ownership group and the insurance plan. I'll frame up how I see insurance first, and then I'd like for you to kind of provide some context around it. But, I think that listeners, people, myself, I've experienced this as a consumer. I've experienced it on the billing side. But, going back that you have a history with United Healthcare, you're now working on an I-SNP, and it's ProCare Advantage, right? Mm-hmm. I guess let's go all the way back to Obamacare, right? So I had bought insurance at that point. We were billing insurance. I was in a medical practice, and I was buying insurance at that point. And for a period of time, insurance had been relatively stable. Like the cost of insurance, it may have been increasing 2 to 4% a year, but it was accessible for most. Obamacare came around, the Affordable Care Act, and there was a 15% margin concept that came into play called the medical loss ratio, which I'm sure you're familiar with. So, and for listeners, what that is, it really said that 85% of the expense of what you pay an insurance company has to go into the healthcare, which means that at most for a large group plan, 15% could be used for administrative expenses, marketing, executive compensation, and profits. So it's a well-intended idea, really. I think it was actually, like I said, well-intended. It was a good idea that, hey, these insurance companies make a lot of money. Health insurance is expensive. We're only going to allot 15% to go to the bottom line for the insurance company. So ultimately what resulted is higher total medical costs equals higher absolute dollars retained, and even if the percentage stays fixed. So an example of this would be back before Obamacare, a premium might have been $10,000 a year. Medical spend was $8,500. The insurance company got to keep $1,500. Insurance companies just naturally, and I don't necessarily think they're the bad guys. I think that they just naturally came to the point where they go, well, if the deductible is $20,000, now we can put $17,000 towards medical spend, and we get to keep $3,000 and double their profits. So there's actually an incentive here where the absolute dollar return could double if healthcare doubles, right? And we've seen that now, and maybe it's triple now. But point being, when you mentioned earlier, and I was actually thinking about when what gets measured gets managed. I mean, if you put a framework around insurance companies in which the higher healthcare totals are, the more money they get to keep, there is zero incentive for health insurance companies to have cheaper healthcare. And therefore, we result in the inflation of healthcare costs, right? I've felt it's very interesting. I can speak to this. We've over the past 20 years owned hospitals, surgery centers, labs, pharmacies, et cetera. We have gone to try to contract in a surgery center with an insurance plan and said, hey, we'll take 125% of Medicare rate. Currently, we're having to send everything to the hospital down the street, HCA Hospital, 350%. They're triple the cost of what it costs us, and they won't give us a contract at 125. Now, why would that be that they would want our patient to have surgery down the street for 350% of Medicare when we're offering 125? Well, I'll tell you why. The premiums go way up. They charge more. I mean, it's just, there's no other logical explanation that I can. So I'm going to continue providing my opinion on this, and then I'll let you. But, the bottom line of this for me is that it really limited the percentage insurers could keep when they put this into place. It didn't limit the dollar amount, just the percentage, and therefore the unintentional consequence is that we have healthcare inflation. So my question for you is, do you feel that's a fair characterization of what happened? And I would like to know if I-SNPs are just going to be playing the same role that insurance companies play before, or are they actually positioned differently to actually reduce the cost of healthcare, therefore reducing the cost to the consumer at the SNF?
I never heard anybody say it the way you did. And my wheels are kind of turning as you say that, because I actually think you might be onto something. What I will say is I think you're giving people a little too much credit, because that's a grand movement you would have to do to drive overall spend. But I think the larger companies can get there. I think you're actually spot on. But I had never thought about that till you literally said that. I think you're spot on, James, on the commercial segment and what you're talking about. I think in Medicare, it would be impossible to pull that off, right? So I think in Medicare, I think what you're saying, it can be true, and then also not true on the Medicare side. On the Medicare side, it's as simple as this, right? Is actuarials are just looking at the spend, right? And then they're giving Medicare Advantage plans, which we're one of, right? And saying, hey, in Harris County, everybody costs us $5,000 a month. That is 65 and over. In this geography, we're going to give you $4,000 a month to figure it out. You're going to save the taxpayers $1,000 a month. You're going to manage it. You're going to be fully at risk for $4,000. So I don't think it necessarily goes, but I actually think you're onto something. You're going to put me down a rabbit hole now when I leave here on the commercial side, because I think you're onto something on the commercial side.
Not to cut you off, on the federal and state, when it comes to Medicare and Medicaid, we've actually never spent less in a year. There's not a recorded year where we've spent less using Medicare replacement or Medicaid, right? So when we privatize health insurance versus using just traditional Medicare, the spend actually goes up.
I think it's a false negative. I'll tell you, I have pretty strong opinions on this one. I think it's a false negative because of attribution, right? It's impossible, and I think ACOs, I'm a fan of ACOs, are going to give us a better lens into that as we delve more and more into them and get more data. It's a false positive because I will tell you, or a false negative, sorry. I will tell you, in our buildings, we run a great program, ProCare. The people that choose ProCare are the ones that are like, oh, God, I'm not happy with everything my mom has. She has all these needs. She can use these bells and whistles. And the people that are really healthy are like, hey, I'm good. I'm going to just stay with my Medicare and not join ProCare Advantage. I don't need to be managed. So you end up getting the sicker people in managed care. So I think it's a false negative. Now, for us, it's difficult because we own an insurance company. We're pro managed care, but we're also a provider foundationally and more there. So I think there's some narrative truth in that statement, and we'd love it to be true as providers, but I don't think it's absolutely true. I think sicker people.
So you think it's sicker people choose managed care?
So the data shows that, but it's not the right test group, right? There isn't like an evening out that says where ACOs, most people are blind that they're in an ACO, right?
Yeah.
So
because
since
they're provider driven,
yes,
correct?
So as we get more data on that point, that's probably going to be able to prove your point, James, like even more or articulate that. If you're seeing that is necessarily true, that might be the case. But I know ACOs that don't hit their benchmarks either, right? And it's like, and some that do, or some that strategically go to pockets that they know are going to have lower expense, right? There's a lot of like manipulation in the data and the case mix that don't really give us, we're not where we need to be able to make assumptions like that.
And this is a general concept, so I don't want you to think about Procare Advantage, but just in general, when the facilities and the ownership groups start to also have collaboration or co-ownership with the I-SNP, do you anticipate that there will be kind of a reverse of this where, hey, let's go ahead and get all the healthy people into the I-SNP, but the unhealthy people, let's leave them in Medicare Advantage, the external Medicare Advantage or traditional Medicare?
I don't think so. I think the government gets plenty wrong, as I'm sure the four of us would agree. But I think they're getting a little smarter on how they reimburse, right? For Medicare Advantage, but also the providers like PDPM, right? We used to get paid for what we do, that Kip. And that's very broken, right? Because you could be incentivized to financially, I'm not saying anybody would do this, to have, a 92-year-old that probably should be on hospice, be on a treadmill all the time because you're making more. That's asinine, right? That's not good for anybody. Now we're paid more for acuity and what their needs are. Same thing in Medicare Advantage, right? It's risk adjusted, right? So I would say we've even learned that. Like at Procare, where we're like, oh, the healthy people are the best. Well, we get paid 1/10 for the healthy people, right? The chronic person with COPD and they might be a tube feeder and have an artificial opening and an amputated toe, we get paid 4 times as much for that person. So I would say the government's getting smarter because people have cherry picked for a long time, right, as an industry on both provider side and insurance side. So I think if the government stays on top of that where it's needs based, we'll be fine. With that said, there's tons of issues going on with managed care. I would say, I don't know, I don't think that's a subject you got into with Gary when he was on here, but I would say as an industry, we really got to hold managed care accountable. Yeah. We are as friendly a managed care company as you're going to see at Cantex. That's part of, I forgot to mention that in the 100% club. Yep. That's how we got there too, is we're pretty innovative. We're pretty aggressive with our managed care partners. We do a great job. We have a great case management team. We have great clinical teams, all that. With that said, the fact that managed care is still paying us in an antiquated way at a fraction of the price is severely broken. And I think if there's anything, and I know it's a focus of the coalition now, it's we need more people speaking our language and advocating for us. The truth of the matter is our industry, everybody you guys talk to in this podcast, we are never, you guys included as a provider, we are never seen as cost savers for the managed care companies or revenue growers, more importantly. They historically view primary care physicians and hospitals as the only ones that can either get them a commercial account or grow membership, right? The rest of us are white noise and expense lines, right? Till they view and probably move to more value-based care, that's one of those things everybody's like saying, but nobody does. I hate when that happens in our industry, right? But till they really move to VBC with you guys too, as like a pharmacy and lab company, I mean, lab and x-ray company and all the stuff you guys do, or us, we're not going to get where we need to go, where they're saying, hey, we'll pay you more if you're getting better outcomes. That's ultimately where we need to shift, but we need a lot of help, and we're so far away. I would say I like where we're at in Cantex. I would put us ahead of everybody else in our managed care strategy, execution, rates, all that. We're still not even close to where we need to be. It's still, 70 cents on the dollar, and not an equitable relationship is what I would say. That's probably our number one problem, is that it isn't equitable, right? We need them. They don't think they need us.
Sure.
And I want to carefully word that. They need us, but they don't think they need us.
So have you guys been working through the coalition on this specific issue, or are you in the Capitol? What work's being done?
It's a big agenda item for this next coming year. Is really like, that's really, I think the coalition focused so much on rate because we were just underfunded and I got huge wins. I think managed care is, I don't think it's one of our top 2 items that the coalition's going to push forward, that we just need help with, honestly.
I was going to ask your biggest challenge, your biggest learning expense with the I-SNP. What would that be?
How much fraud there's out there in healthcare. that has shocked us. How many people will just not see a patient of ours and bill really? Medicare.
Wow. Kidding.
Yeah.
Like you have patients in the I-SNP, you're like, what's this charge for? We don't know this person.
Yep. And thankfully over the years, we've even gotten leads from residents, right? We'll have like a daughter that gets an explanation of benefits and say, this person didn't see my mom. I was with my mom that day.
Wow.
Right. And so I would say the rampant fraud that's going out. And this is honestly, James, in our earlier topic about like the tug and pull, if you will, of managed care. It's the con of it, too many to count, right? I don't even think we need to do the con. The pro, I would say, is we tend to find as taxpayers, private is always better for our dollars, right? There's a world if we get it right. And I don't want to speak like in absolutes. We're so far away, as you heard me say. If we get it right, there is value in having a private company being like, hey, like a third of your taxpayer money is going to fraud. And this stuff like that. We're going to police it better than the local government office. So I think that is where managed care should be valuable, is telling its story, identifying fraud, making sure our taxpayers are going to outcomes. That might be like very Pollyanna, right? And maybe that's never doable, but that's what we need to be tracking to.
And you guys catch this because the patients are in your building. You know them. You have hands on them. And so then there's this conversation because you're managing that P&L, which otherwise it's, we'll call it in the abyss, right? It's a United managed plan or I-SNP. They're so big, it just doesn't ever happen.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah. And we're very granular. Like I would say one thing that would shock you if you ever worked for Cantex is like how like in the weeds we are, despite being like in the big picture stuff. Like we have a TPA that processes our claims and they love us, but they also know we're a pain in their hiney. We literally have a very talented person on our network team for the health plan, our lead for that. She literally is looking at 4,000 lines of everything that gets paid out, right? Other plans don't do that, right? But she's literally looking and being like, hey, we're cutting a check for $72 for this provider I've never seen before in our buildings. Are they in our buildings? So it takes that much, which is great, scary because who knows how much you miss. But there's tons of bad apples out there, I would say is our number one learning experience from that.
And I have a strong optimism about this. I believe there's so much data and it's so cumbersome to do the right thing. That's the reason that managed care has, in my opinion, failed. There's a scoreboard at the end of the day. Did it save the consumer money? Did it save the system money? And the answer is no over the last 20 years. But I now believe with AI, automation, I think we're going to get there. So I'm a big believer. I do think it should be privatized. I like it's just the fact that every year you look at the scoreboard and you go, didn't really work on paper. And you might be right. Maybe it's truly the sicker population, so it's not apples to apples. And that's a really good point I hadn't thought about. But I do believe that with AI and automation that we're going to get it there. And I think it should be privatized. So I'm with you there, but to close the loop on that. But I want to transition over and talk about rural health for a minute. So, more than 60 million Americans live in rural America. In Texas, it's more than 20% of Texans live in rural Texas. Recently, with the One Big Beautiful Bill, $50 billion was provided for, I believe it's called the Rural Health Transformation Act. And of that, I believe $281 million went to Texas to improve health outcomes in rural America. Now, I think the specifications there are cancer, heart disease, diabetes, obviously kidney care. I expect that when we look around the state, we work with the majority of nursing homes in the state of Texas. There's a ton of them in rural. I looked you guys up last night. You have 7 locations in Houston, which it looks like you're Alvin and Rosenberg. Those are rural. East Texas, you're maybe all of them fall under rural. DFW, you have some metro, but then you have 2 real north Dallas rural facilities, San Antonio and Austin. I think those are metro. And then you have 2 in South Texas and 1 out in West Texas. So you guys have a fairly significant population that is a rural community. And the question for you is, how do you feel about the care that takes place within your rural buildings versus your metropolitan buildings? And then are you positioned to gain some of these funds to improve the quality of care within your buildings in the rural setting?
On the second one, I don't know, and I don't want to give you a misleading answer. Well, that I don't know if we're positioned to get the funds. We are, most of our DNA is urban, as you know, in our landscape, but we do have rural outliers, right, or centers that serve a rural community. What I would say, the number one issue that we got to solve in those facilities of ours, but just in general, Texas got to figure out is specialty care access. That is like totally broken. in one of our journeys that we're on is we're starting to do specialty medicine. So on the medical group, we're starting to do behavioral health ourselves. We have found that this is a bugaboo even in our urban buildings. James, honestly, is we won't have specialists that want to go, and Kip, you know this as an administrator, that want to go to a building regardless of where it's at, right? They'll be like, ugh, icky, right?
Yep.
That's really what they're feeling. They don't say it that way, but it's like, icky, I'm not going to do nursing home. I got a private practice, it's full. So the long-term care community tends to get underserved from like specialty care, and especially those diseases you're talking about that are tied to the one big beautiful bill, right? So pulmonologists, a cardiologist, rheumatologist. We need more people going into the space. We only have one partner right now that's willing to do that. So what we've kind of stepped back as an organization, we say is we need to create a specialty care division where we can actually employ people to be parked in these buildings, right? Or do things via remote telehealth. I really think that if there's one thing to be an advocate about is telehealth. I do believe I was skeptical of telehealth at the beginning. We've seen good outcomes from that. I think that is often going to need to be the go-to move for rural communities in terms of impactful care.
Sure.
The really difficult journey we're on is, I can tell you guys right now, and this wouldn't shock you, there's tons of fraud going on right now with telehealth. Like anything new, the risk you run are the bad apples going to ruin it for everybody else. But there is impactful telehealth, right? I don't know that you're ever going to be able to get a reumatologist to go to, Rosenberg at least is kind of close, right? But like, I don't know that you're going to, in some of the West Texas facilities or even Beaumont, we have issues with access sometimes.
We're in the center of Houston. It'll take you 9 months to get into a rheumatologist.
Yeah.
I mean,
Absolutely.
Psychiatry, rheumatology. I mean, there's some specialization. Neurology, you might wait a year. I mean, so I can't imagine the issues you guys have in the rural setting.
Yeah. What I do think is we'll serve that community in like a vertical. So this is going back to the point of why we like verticals, James, is it might make sense. Our rehab, our VP of rehab has done a great job getting into the assisted living, senior living space, right, to deliver services there. That is like a vertical that is just human capital based. He's done a great job figuring out a model. We can scale that to places, whether it's working with like an RHC, right? I think funding like rural health clinics and FQHCs is a really good thing, and that's part of the bill. I think partnering with those organizations and messaging what we've been doing the last couple of years, which is we're not a nursing home company. We're a healthcare company that is anchored by, beautiful nursing homes. And that's in our DNA, but we can serve all the needs that are out there. So I would say our biggest play probably in rural is going to be servicing them with either NP med group or like rehab services.
Love that.
Interesting.
Cool.
And that's where it doesn't leave us out, James. That's where I think, to Chris's point earlier about like vertical integration, is we always want a seat at the table. So if it's something that doesn't make sense for nursing home, we have enough sandboxes that we're like, hey, we don't want to miss out on that, right? Is there, Medicare, it hasn't rolled out well if you guys read it, but they have a guide program for dementia, right? Nursing homes aren't eligible for it, but med groups are, right? So we'd like when there's things out there that we're like, how do we get into that? Can we get into that? I think that's one of our core strengths.
Awesome. We are over an hour. We're going to have you back, man.
All right,
I've got a lot more to talk about. We could do this for another hour.
63 more questions, but
I got one more question.
Yeah.
Shout out to the 6 nursing homes in Cantex.
Amazing.
Newsweek, top nursing homes in the country. That's fantastic.
Fantastic. We're proud of it. So you'll see it everywhere. You'll see it from, if you look right now, you look at our logo on social media, it's got like the little banner on it. It doesn't have the usual Cantex logo. It'll say the best nursing homes. You can find us all over social media. We're really proud of the work they've put into it. Honestly, we have, I wish there was more consolidated like metrics that are posted out there. There really isn't. Things are done at the individual building level, so it's on us to tell the story. But if you, a bunch of people use a platform called Team TSI. For the last couple of years, we typically are number 1 on the list in terms of star-rated buildings for large operators that have 20 or more homes. So we're proud of that. A lot of great work's been put into that. We got a great clinical facility management ops team. We couldn't be prouder. So I'm glad you saw it, Kip. You'll see that a lot out there. That's the biggest thing, to hold ourselves accountable. Are we telling our story in the next year or so? Are we continuing that and being marathon runners with that?
Well, Armando, you've told a fantastic story. You've told just a wonderful story about Cantex, the whole entire industry. Wrap us up, Chris Light. How are we feeling?
Yeah, man, we're going to do this again. I have way too much more to talk to you about, but I just want to say thank you for coming on. It was really nice to get to know you recently. And also specifically, you guys are doing incredible things. And I think that's what the industry needs. It's like the reason we have this podcast is to shine light on people that are doing really builders, in the long-term care space. And so really just close us out from a standpoint. Actually, I'm not gonna steal it, Kip, please.
You gonna throw it at me? I was letting it go to you, but so we always ask, like, so it's Our Purpose Podcast. That's the title of it. And James and Chris came up with that idea and just that name because we believe your story matters. Your story has a purpose and it's worth telling. Wrap it up for a second. Armando's purpose is what?
Oh, I think our purpose, I'll start. You told me I could talk about family. I definitely, being a dad, good role model for my boys. So I think that's number one, just showing passion about life. But I think passion about this space, I would say work is very important to me. My purpose probably every day is making sure our industry is like leveled up, bringing the right people and telling the story. I can't say that enough. I think I repeated it a couple times there, but that's, if I have one mission in life, is how do we tell our story at Cantex? How do we tell our story in long-term care that we're doing real good stuff, right? And we're not the bad guys. We got plenty of good stories to tell. We just got to be vocal, hold ourselves accountable to that. So,
well, thank you for elevating the climate. Thank you for elevating long-term care. Thank you for pushing the envelope. Thank you for changing the outcomes and experiences of patients. We thank you for sitting down with us and giving us your time and your energy. Thanks for sharing your light with us as well too. And we're grateful to have you today sit down with us.
Cool. You guys are doing great stuff. I'm really proud of this podcast. It's gonna
enjoyed it, man.
You guys are gonna take over the
Thanks,
world.
Armando.
Did a great job. Ladies and gentlemen, that is Our Purpose
Thank you, guys.
Podcast. Thank you for listening to this episode. We got Armando Guzman. He is the man. Thank you for sharing your time with us today. We'll see you later.
Thank you.